No, it was fogged in. We couldn't fly. So we had to do it.
All right, fine. Let me ask you, I saw some polls today that showed that you were in second place today, behind Mr. Roman.
Who's poll?
I think this was Renwick poll?
I haven't seen it. I haven't heard of it.
I think so. I'm not sure. I just wanted to ask you about how you feel about the position you are in polls these days.
Well, I say there's been so many polls, it's hard to say. What all do is just make up our minds to wait and see what the people decide on Saturday. It's all we can do.
Are you concerned? I mean, you've always done so well in the polls before. I mean, this must be a new experience for you to not have the numbers going with you.
Well, this would be the first poll taken in 6 months or during this whole campaign. If, in fact, it shows that, it does not show me leading. I can't comment further than that. What were the numbers? Do you know how much spread there was?
No, I don't. I mean, it's just something I heard. I'm not
you just heard?
Yeah,
not even positive?
Positive.
I don't know. We just have to wait and see. We shall see. Won't be long before we'll know the real results.
What could account for what haven't seemed to be a great upsurge of support for you this time when you've had such support in the past? What might account for it?
Well, you got 4 other candidates that are running. One of them is Secretary of State, which is a statewide office, and you got 3 members of Congress, each of whom have support on their own and who kind of decimate the voting strength. And when you're in an election with 4 other major candidates, it's awfully hard to to capture half the vote. I mean, each of them will get 15, 20, or 22% of the vote on his own strength. And if you got 4 candidates running who are doing that, then it doesn't leave much left for anybody. So anybody in this kind of an election with 25 points or better is doing good.
What about the economy? Is the economy hurting you?
Oh, of course. I mean, anytime you're in public office and the economy is bad, there's a reflection in voting strength because people naturally assume that if you're in office, we have to bear that in mind. I just like to remind people that the economy is better now than it was when I took office 4 years ago. Unemployment has gone down for 10 consecutive months. There are 95,000 more people working today than a year ago. And things are generally better off. They're not as good as they ought to be, and certainly not as good as they were during the term I was governor before. But it is a tough time for everybody in public office now, from the president on down.
And what about you? Some of your opponents say that you are the issue this time. It's almost,
no question about it. No question I'm the issue. I mean, if you're running against the fella for public office, you have to make him the issue. That's standard politics. If he's not the issue, then there are no issues.
Well, I think they're talking about what would be a taint of scandal, the troubles you've had in the past, that this may have caught up with you.
I don't think that's correct. My standard response to that is that if anybody knows anything that's wrong or can point to a penny missing out of the state's treasury, let him come forward and say so. If not, he ought to shut his mouth. Very simple. I think those kind of generic, broad statements which have no substance are beginning to wear thin. And, I can't do any more than simply say, look, if anybody knows anything, be he in the press or be he in the U.S. Attorney's Office, he ought to step forward and expose it. I think the public has a right to that. And I think I have a privilege to say that unless and until somebody does come up with something specific, it is nothing but what it is, political hogwash.
What are your predictions for Saturday?
I still think I'll run first.
And after Saturday?
Then I'll run first with whoever runs second on Saturday. That's my prediction.
You'll be governor again.
Those are my predictions also. I feel very comfortable with the election. I feel a lot more comfortable winning the election than the problems we're going to have, regardless of who is governor. The state has some very serious problems. I think people are very concerned about it, as rightly they should be. That is why I keep stressing the fact that, look, if you don't like me, that's understandable. But find you a candidate who has some specific positive proposals to make things happen. When you find that candidate, then go vote for him. I don't have any problems with that. The thing is, he hasn't surfaced yet.
We also heard with some of the polls in the past, not this one that I just heard about today, but some in the past, that they found that there is a large percentage of people, like 50%, who say anybody but Edwards.
Well, if you talk to the people in the news media, you run across that kind of a situation. And if, in fact, there are 50% of the people who say anybody but Edwards, then they don't have any problems. They'll get somebody but Edwards. But I don't think there are 50% of them.
Okay.
We'll know Saturday.
Bag. Back to the city,
Back to the city.
and then back out here at 6 o'clock for the workers'
Yeah.
thing. It's nice having a helicopter. Next time we're gonna have a bigger production and get one ourselves.
Well, I can't use the helicopter for the 6 o'clock thing because that's a political function. This is an official function. If I did, somebody in the press would be hollering about it.
Not us. We won't be airing this for another year.
For another year?
Talking about, I mean, I've been in the state for 6 years. You actually taught in a class of mine a couple of years ago at Tulane. Mickey Easterlin's daughter brought you down.
Oh, yes.
It's a good class. Lasted for about 3 hours.
Yes,
For the time that you've been in office and out of office, no matter when I talk to anybody in politics, consultants, politicians, whatever, all discussions of state politics revolve around you. You know, in office and out of office. So when you have the power of the governor or not, what is it? Why?
I suppose because since the days of Huey Long, no one has come along who has been the focal point of political activity in Louisiana for as long as I have. I'm the only one who's ever been elected 3 times. And in modern times, there's a great deal of press interest in whoever is governor. And so in these turbulent times, going from the good times of the 70s to the bad times of the 70s, for good or bad, I have been more or less at the top of the heap and the one around which the discussion and the controversy all swirl.
What's kept you at the top of the heap so long?
I suppose it's the awareness by most people that in spite of all the things that are said about me by the press and in spite of all the investigations that I've been involved in, that no one has been able to substantiate any of the allegations made. And I think people view that as being part of the political process and also kind of like a sanctification or a purifying thing, in that having gone through this trial by fire and come out unmarked, that there's some kind of an indication that in spite of the allegations, I must be proper, otherwise something would have been proven. Number one. Number two, senior citizens and disadvantaged people and poor people, and farmers and veterans, and people who are struggling to make it in life, I think see in me, in various aspects, someone who has a special knowledge of their concerns and a special concern for their condition. And number three, I'm an outspoken, controversial person, but I think people view me as being a person who can get the job done, and a person willing to take risk as well as to innovate and to come up with new ideas to meet changing times.
When we were at the fairgrounds on Saturday night, you invoked the name of Huey Long. Do you think of yourself as the logical heir to Huey Long?
I'm certainly a logical heir in the sense that we are promoting the interest of the same groups of people. We, of course, have certainly...
Chairman, could I get you to say you're the logical heir of Huey Long, rather than just the
All right.
logical heir, so we know what you're talking
Certainly, I would be the logical heir to Huey Long when you view the succession of governors that have been here since he left the scene, none of whom have ever espoused the same kinds of concerns for the poor and the disadvantaged and the elderly as I have. The difference between us, however, is in methods. The methods which were needed in the early 30s and even permissible in the early 30s now are just totally not acceptable in this day and age. There's too much press coverage, too much awareness, the public is too alert, and the kind of things that a governor could do in the early 30s simply would be branded as a dictatorship in the 1980s and cannot be used as a method to do things no matter how laudable the goals might be.
Of course, Louisiana politics seems to be a little bit different than politics in other places. We covered Leonard Chabert on Sunday, and it seemed like every house over there had 20 or 30 signs, sometimes more than one for a particular office. the politics here seems like it's different, that maybe it's maybe not the 30s, but there's something different about it.
Well, there's a greater intensity and a greater personal awareness by the average voter about candidates in Louisiana. That springs from the fact that government, both at a local and at a state level, is so directly involved in the affairs of people. And people, therefore, depend upon government to build the roads, to provide the sewer systems, and to do many of the services that in a lot of other areas are done by the citizens themselves or by private organizations or by local government as distinguished from state government. And here we have a patronymic kind of government in the sense that many of the functions and benefits of services that are provided for people come from the central state government in Louisiana rather than at the local level. For instance, this state maintains the only statewide hospital service to care for the indigent. No other state in the nation has anything comparable to it. All of that is done either at the local level or the county level in other states.
Is populism then, or populist policies, more important here than it is in other states?
It is more important in the sense that it is a system that we have grown up with and have become accustomed to, and we still have a large segment of our population that depends upon government to get by in life, to provide educational systems and to provide programs to take care of the sick and the poor and the disadvantaged and the elderly.
A lot of times when we talk about state politics, when we talk about the fact that you've been the dominant figure in politics, a lot of things go back to the personality. I'm not particularly interested in particular stories or whatever, but a lot of people say that you live close to the edge. That's part of the controversy. I wonder, what do you think of your own style? Has it helped you? I mean, there's some things that you're quoted as saying that would ruin careers of politicians other places. Is it just your personality that allows it?
As a person of Cajun descent who tries to mix humor with seriousness, I say things in a humorous vein, sometimes to disarm my opponents, sometimes simply to make light of a situation. And I think people recognize it in me and can separate the wheat from the chaff and the serious from the humorous. And something said in humor in a certain environment or before an audience on a given day may read or sound different a year later. But the people that I'm speaking to know what I'm talking about and understand it.
This is probably going to be your last statewide election, win or lose.
I think so.
How do you feel at the end of the career? How do you think people will remember you?
Well, naturally, people remember public figures after they're gone in a different way than they do while they're in office. I can recall when Harry Truman was considered to be despised, despicable, and had a popularity rating in the low 20s during his term as president. Now, in retrospect, years later, those same critics regard him as one of the best, most sincere and outspoken presidents of this century. And history has judged him a great deal more kindly than contemporary people did at the time he was president. And the reverse is also true. In some instances, public figures, because of sympathy or perks and bubble popularity, later on are judged more harshly in the light of actual accomplishment rather than perceptions. In my own instance, I think that I'm going to have a mixed bag. I think that history is going to judge me well from a standpoint of governmental accomplishments. I wrote the first Constitution in 50 years in this state, reorganized state government, changed the method by which we collect taxes on oil and gas, which brought billions of dollars to Louisiana. Built a whole VOTEC system, built an adult education system, built a special education system. I built half the bridges in this state over the Mississippi River and most of the interstate system, and left $600 million in surplus when my term as governor ended after the first two terms. All of that will look well in the history books. On the other hand, they're going to go back and read newspaper clippings of criticism and objections that arise and occurred during my term as governor, and it's going to be a mixed bag. As far as I'm concerned, I would like for people to remember me as a person who did not jump when the newspapers yelled, who was concerned about not so much about his image, but about the realities of life, and who moved to make the life of the average citizen just a little bit better, or as I like to say, who will recognize that I did not come here to afflict the comfortable, but to comfort the afflicted.
Did you always want to get into politics?
As long as I can remember.
If you hadn't been a politician, what would you think you would have been?
Well, I would have liked to have been a country and western singer, but I had no talent, so no way. But there are people who say I have no talent for politics either. But I managed to succeed in that, even though I could never have succeeded as a country and western singer.
Louisiana, they're both entertainment.
In Louisiana, it would have been very helpful to have some kind of musical talent. We've had governors who have musical talent, but somehow I missed that.
Do you have any regrets at all?
Oh, sure. I think very few people could live 60 years as I have and not have any regrets. But on the other hand, the pluses in my life, from my perspective, far outweigh the minuses. And I have been very fulfilled. It is a great distance from where I started in life as the son of a sharecropper with a third-grade education, living in a house with no air conditioning, no indoor plumbing, no running water, and no electricity, to become a member of the United States Congress and then the only person elected governor 3 times, and hopefully 4 times by the time this is aired.
Do you worship with blacks?
Oh, yes. Because black people are, as a group, have been disadvantaged and are struggling to make life better for themselves and their children. After years of struggling for basic freedoms, they are now struggling for economic freedoms and opportunities. The problems of exclusion have now been substituted by the problems of inclusion, in that they have all the rights and privileges that everyone else has, but it's been difficult for enough of them to break the economic barriers. And I have been very dedicated to that as a concept, because I think it helps the whole society. When we all do well, it helps everybody.
You see a more freewheeling governor's race, or is it going to be statesman-like it seems to have been so far?
Well, it will depend on who makes the runoff with me. Also, you must recognize that all the cruel, fair, true, false, bad things that have been said about me have been repeated for so long that they're beginning to lose the edge. The problems surface after you take office. Then you have the responsibility of actually making things happen. During a campaign, you have the luxury of making predictions and statements about what you're going to do and what you're going to try to accomplish. But the reality of trying to get them done, and especially in these difficult times, is far different from the fantasies of a campaign.
Some people said in Louisiana that we have a crop of better candidates than elected officials, that we're somehow better at producing candidates than actually people who can govern. Do you think that that's true?
No, I think what you have is a number of good politicians in Louisiana, because we have an extraordinary number of men and women that are interested in politics. But what happens is that when you become elected, then the realities and the responsibilities of the office begin to hit you. And you find, as these candidates that are now running against me will find, if one of them is elected, that it is just impossible to do some of the things that they're going around saying they're going to do. Number one, there's a legislature to deal with, which is difficult to convince. Number two, it is just wrong and impossible to suggest to school teachers that they're going to get a $5,000 a year raise, which equates to about a $300 million impact on the budget, in a day and age when the budget deficits are running $200 to $400 million. Yet it sounds good and it's easy to say if you're not governor and if you don't expect to get elected. But the guy who is governor, or the fellow such as I who expects to get elected, has to be careful to try to tailor his comments close to reality, because you've got to live with it for 4 years.
What did you say about, I mean, I think in one of the debates you were talking about how you wanted the voters to make sure they didn't elect the other 4 guys because they'd have to live with what they said, or?
Well, yes, I was making the point that if one of the other 4 fellows got elected, I could live a long, happy life watching them squirm and be tortured and hoisted on their own predictions and foolish statements about what they're going to accomplish and do, because I know, and I think the public knows, that that's just unrealistic.
It must have been much more fun to govern the first 2 terms when the states, you know, the oil prices were up, there was more money. A lot of people, I'm sure you've been asked this question a million times, but after the last 4 years, you've had a lot of troubles, a lot of things that take your attention
I don't know
away.
of a single human being outside of people who have trouble with family members or health problems who have had as many problems as I've had in the last 3.5 years. My problems are very public, very large, very much magnified, and they translate into problems for other people because when the governor of this state has problems, then everyone is affected by it.
Why run again this time then?
A number of reasons. Number one, I'm the only candidate who is running who has a concern for veterans and for old people, sick people, vulnerable people, scared people, lonely people. Number two, they don't know what they're talking about. It's just impossible for a governor to do what they're talking about doing. Tax reform is a euphemism for saying nothing. Saying that you're going to get a better educational system by snapping your fingers is unrealistic. Saying that you're going to bring industry here by providing a better image, is not only unrealistic, it's grossly unfair. The governors of Texas and Oklahoma are very fine Christian, Republican family men, and it hadn't helped the economies of Oklahoma or Texas one iota. The governor before me, Dave Treen, had nothing going for him except the perception that he was honest, and I assumed that he was. Every time the press wrote something about him, they had a standard paragraph about how honest he was. But that's the time that the state of Louisiana reached down into the depths from a standpoint of unemployment and lack of industrial development. Image has nothing to do with it. It is opportunities. People do not come to a state or flee from a state because they don't like the colorful, controversial image of the governor. They come because they see an opportunity to make money. If I had a number of employees in Louisiana that were willing to work for minimum wage and produce, you could bring industries here by the dozens because they could profit from the sweat and toil of men and women working in sweatshops at minimum wage, as they're now doing in Mexico and Taiwan and Korea and other places. But people in Louisiana cannot afford to work for minimum wage. They can't pay their utility bills or their grocery bills or medical care for themselves or their children at minimum wage. And hence, that is a problem. On the other hand, we have done some tremendous things with bringing industries into Louisiana. We bringing Martin Marietta here, which is going to create 6,000 jobs. We brought Boeing. These are two national corporations who came here and never even said anything about the image of the state, but they saw an opportunity to develop a product or to establish a business relationship using trained Louisiana employees, and that's why they came, And I brought Kirk Industries here out of California, met with them on a number of occasions, and they repeatedly told me that they liked Louisiana's image, that they liked a colorful governor. They left California because they weren't able to talk to the governor to help get some problems resolved, and they felt comfortable coming to Louisiana. And CEOs throughout the nation that have businesses in both this state and other states will tell you almost without exception that the atmosphere and accommodation here and cooperation by government is better than it is in most states. At least we are caring and we are available, and we try to cut red tape for them. We try to make things happen, and we work with them to solve their problems.
Louisiana, we've always sort of had a legacy, I suppose, of very colorful political leaders, flamboyant political leaders in one way or another. Why do you think that is? Why is Louisiana different?
We've had both. I mean, without naming names, I can think back of 3 governors in my lifetime who were just as bland as unleavened bread, including the one who preceded me. And every time they've run for re-election, not one of them could even make the runoff. It's not a question of colorful governors or controversial governors. It's a question of getting things done, making things happen, facing to responsibility and reality, and having people feel that someone who is governor cares about them.
And the colorful governors are also the ones that also got something done.
That's right. The colorful governors are the controversial ones that made things happen.
Who's your favorite Louisiana politician, thinking back in history? Do you have a favorite? Someone you really respect?
Well, I think my favorite from a standpoint of just pure politics would be Earl Long. He was not as effective in a lot of ways as his brother Huey, but he lived in different times. But I think from a standpoint of knowing the people of this state, he had a better feel for the people of Louisiana than Huey Long had, and I think could do things with greater finesse. But, you know, one would have to say either one or both of the Longs because of the impact they've had on the state.
Who was the greatest politician you ever saw?
Lyndon Johnson. I knew him well and personally. I was in Congress at the time he was there. And, I've been in private meetings with him and public meetings with him. I've been in a number of areas where he was in hostile crowds and campaigning with him. And I think from a standpoint of just politician, getting things done and getting a message to people and being able to meet with opposition and meet it head on, he was the champion.
How about in Louisiana?
The most effective?
Best politician you've ever seen in Louisiana?
It's hard to say. I really don't know. I would not be able to say. I couldn't.
Not Edwin Edwards?
Oh, well, no doubt. If you allowed me to include myself, I might be a committee of one, but I would certainly, I would think that from a standpoint of my repeated successes spanning a period of 35 years without blemish, and given the adversaries that I've had to battle and work against, I would say Edwin Edwards. I think few men and women in America could have withstood the problems that have been heaped upon me in the past 15 years by Republican U.S. attorneys and their grand juries and the Justice Department in Washington and a very hostile, critical press.
So to repeat it one more time, who was the greatest politician you've seen in Louisiana during your lifetime?
My lifetime, it would have to be every time I shave and look in the mirror, I see him.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Let's get this.
Willie, can you hear me out there?
Yes, sir.
The rest of the audience, would you come forward, please? The program will be starting real short, like.
Hi, how you doing? Hi. One more time. Hello, brother. How you feeling?
All right.
Hi. Good evening. How you doing?
All right.
Good evening. How you feeling? Glad to see you. Hi. Thank you very much. Let's get this over with.
This much pretty much.
Thank you very much for coming. It's a pleasure to be here to dedicate this portion of LA 23 that's just been overlaid. Let's call it a dedication and hopefully a groundbreaking for completion of the 4-lane of this section, which is right around the corner, by the way. President, a man who has lived with many of these highways, seen them start off as almost cow paths, and you're not that old, Lukey, I know, but necessity for the great development oil and gas industry and for the evacuation of many of our people when hurricanes do come. So I'd like to at this time call on the parish president and my dear friend, Mr. Lukey Petrovich.
Senator Nunez, ladies and gentlemen, and particularly Governor Edwards, we are grateful to have all of you here in Plaquemines Parish today, dedicating another advancement on this great 4-lane highway project. Plaquemines Parish started this project on its own with grandeur ideas back in 1963. And Governor Edwards is one of the few arguments I run with Judge Perez. He wanted to start the highway up at Belchast, and of course I represented the low end of the parish down at Venice and Buras. And I said, no, we're going to start from both ends, Judge, if we can. And sure enough, we did. Sammy, you might remember that. You're a little older than I am. And that's how we started it. I know Bonnie remembers that. And We started from both ends, and Morris Treadaway is now the biggest complainer, the councilman from Fort Sumner, because we're in the middle there and we're not finishing up yet. But we'll get to it. We're grateful to Governor Edwards and the state of Louisiana, the people of Louisiana, for this project, and we hope to have many, many more in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luke. Next, we'll hear from certainly a man who's done a great job in representing Plaquemines Parish, Patty.
Thank you very much, Sammy, Father Alvin, Governor Edwards, distinguished elected officials, ladies and gentlemen. We also at the present time are about to overlay from the Jefferson Parish line to the tunnel, which is about 3/4 of a mile. But more importantly, as Sammy said to you a few minutes ago, are securing the rights of ways from Home Place up to the Delta Club below Port Sulphur, and simultaneously we will be securing the rights of ways for this, Governor, from Deer Range to West Point La Hache. The two projects together will cost approximately the rights of ways. Call for the bids to be let for the lower piece from Home Place up to to the Delta Club around March of next year, and this piece 6.5 miles in October of 1988. So we're on the road. Within the next year, we will have the beginnings of the full end of these two.
You know, Frank was talking about the cost of the additional, the 4-lane. If you look at the total cost of the highway on this, thank you very much, John. So our next speaker needs no introduction here in Plaquemines Parish, but if you may indulge, I'd just like to say a few words about him, because in the past 24 years since I've known him, since 1964, and I heard Luke say this highway was started in 64. Let me introduce a few public officials before I do that. We have Benny Roussel here, councilman from Plaquemines. He's always been a friend. I don't think there's a time that Frank Patty and I have called upon him, or Luki Petrovich and Bonnie Schoenberger have called upon him, regardless of what it may be for, that he didn't respond. In 1964, when we first started this, he was a Louisiana senator, went on to Congress, came back as governor. He was here when we started the evacuation routes, and in my opinion, I and he and Frank Patty will be here when we finish this evacuation route sometimes in the next 2 or 3 years. My pleasure to present to you your friend and my friend, Governor Edwin Edwards.
My congratulations to the men and women of District 02 and to the contractors, and especially to the people of this area. I came not only to cut the ribbon on this segment of this facility, but to tell you that I'm totally committed to the completion of the 4-laning of this evacuation route, which I helped support when it started as a member of the State Senate in the early 1960s. And I wanted to assure the elected officials and the people of Plaquemines Parish that I am committed to the continuation and completion of this project, not only because of what it means for the convenience and safety of the motoring public, but also for what it means for those unfortunate times in which people of this low part of the state are required to evacuate their homes in order to escape the ravages of hurricanes and other natural disasters. I also want to say that the local officials in this parish have been very helpful to us in working with us in right-of-way acquisitions and other problems in connection with the construction of this and other highways, and to congratulate Senator Sammy Nunes and Representative Frank Patty, who have been leaders and pushers and movers in bringing us to where we are today, and to the completion of this 4-lane system, which is important to the convenience and safety of the people of Plaquemines Parish. Thank you very much.
To cut necktie.
You want to join me? I'd love to join you. Council lady, why don't you do it?
Oh, that'd be great. That's great. You gotta hit it 3 times before it cuts.
3 times? Okay, you
And,
ready?
And the throw. There you got it.
Hey!
Very good. Cut
Cut it again.
Cut yourself a
Right.
souvenir.
Watch my finger. Ouch!
With the neck, huh?
Hey! One more time.
Souvenir.
That's great.
One more time.
One more time? Okay, let's get Frank's.
That's my slogan. One more time.
Take me back and try me one more time.
There we go.
You got it?
Thank you very much.
Good.
This is a souvenir, lady.
A handy pair of scissors there.
Thank you all. See you later. Be good. Take care.
Governor, there's a new Ed Walker poll that shows Buddy Romer leading today. Are you Joe Walker poll? Joe Walker poll that shows Buddy Romer leading. Are you concerned about that? It shows him at 23% and you and Livingston tied at 18% each.
Well, I might end up running second with Bob Livingston. Who knows? That's not a bad position to be in. I think back and forth for the past 6 months. This is just another poll. It may turn out that way on Saturday. We'll have to wait and see. We're only a few days from it, and while I would prefer, of course, that every poll, as all the others, show me running first, if this one shows him running first, well, hoorah for him. Thank you. Thank you,
Governor, what do you say to the opponents who are saying this is your strong side?
I don't sing. Me and has a pretty firm and fixed opinion. I'm really surprised that 6% of the people who watched the debate changed in my favor as a result of it. That makes me feel vote, and he benefited from it and handled it very well.
The question about his father.
Yes.
Governor, are you concerned that your populist message may be losing its appeal in Louisiana?
No, I'm concerned that my populist message may lose its thrust in the state, and that the people who depend upon it and who need it will lose the benefit of it. The message is immaterial. The benefits are what's important.
But it seems if these polls are accurate.
Erosion of my strength. It is possible that Mr. Roma has taken from the undecided votes or taken from the other candidates and catapulted himself into second or first place. That is very possible if in fact he is there. But it is obvious if you look at my standing that I'm still at or about what I always have been, from 18 to 22%. So the erosion has come from other sources rather than mine, apparently.
Your brother said you plan to spend quite a bit of money on election day to get the vote out. Exactly what will that money pay for?
Canvassing, phone banks, encouraging people to get to the polls, and that sort of thing.
How would you characterize your campaign this last week? What you're doing to come out ahead at the voting booth?
I don't think at this point, that's why I'm not concerned about these polls. I don't think this late date that there's going to be that kind of a change in public opinion. I think people pretty well made up their minds, and I don't see much to happen in the next 3 days. I will be involved in political functions tomorrow night, and all day Thursday and on Friday, but that's just because the way we do things in politics in Louisiana. But it seems to me that here 3 days before the election, the average voter must have made up his mind, and those that are waiting till the last minute to make up their minds are probably not going to be influenced by these last-minute campaign activities, but we're going to continue doing what I and the other candidates think we ought to do, and that is to just maintain the momentum and keep the campaign.